Hey everybody, hope you're all having a good afternoon. Just time for another YouTube video. Today's topic is I sort of want to change it up a little bit, and want to sort of go over the three most dangerous rough water boating experiences I've ever had in my entire career. And as you can imagine, I've been fishing tournaments for over 40 years, so man, I've seen so many different dangerous rough water conditions all across the country that it's just been unbelievable. It's been and I love it too, because when you're out in those elements like that and you're surrounded by it, you can really feel and understand the power of nature that is out there, and it's sort of something I'm not afraid of it, but I really enjoy it. There's almost like a sort of a nervous anticipation. And once you get comfortable with yourself as a boat driver, you know what your limitations are, and you know how far you can push yourself, and that just comes with time on the water and experience. But I'm for one, I sort of enjoy super dangerous rough water boating. It's sort of one of those deals that one of the parts of the sport that I really thrive on. But anyway, my top three. I'll start number third and work up to the first one. The third most dangerous, intimidating boat ride I've ever had was at Lake Erie, practicing for an FLW tournament. And I launched out of the mouth of the Detroit River, and I ran out into Lake Erie towards an area called the Pelee Islands, which is about a 30-mile run out into the lake. And if you've never been to Lake Erie, it's basically like there's no difference from Lake Erie in the ocean. It's the same deal. There's been lots and lots of ocean going ships sunk, on all the Great Lakes. And anyway, I was fishing lake out there by Pelee Island. Wind was blowing. On the way out there, it was pretty rough. It was probably, I don't know, we probably had 5 or 6 footers going out there and going with them, just sort of taking my time, 10, 15 miles an hour through there, which isn't a big deal when they're spread wide apart. The wind started building a little bit every hour, and about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I started to start running back, and the wind had really kicked up hard, probably 20, 25 out of the southwest, and it turned those 5 and 6 footers that I was coming with, into, God, it's hard to say, but they look like, 9 to 12 footers to me. And when I'm saying a 9 to 12 footer, I'm talking about the waves up there on the Great Lakes. They tend to be spread a long way apart, so even though I say it's a 10-foot wave, it's not like it's a real stacked together tight wave. But some of them, on a hard wind, they're white capping over the top. So anyway, running back in, the only way you can go under waves like this is you have to run through the trough. So I sort of quartered them going north, and just sort of surfed them up over the top of them. Just kicking it back like 10, 15 miles an hour, just enough to barely keep the boat up on plane. And and it took probably, I'm gonna guess, 2.5 hours to get back, to the launch ramp, which was only at the point at that particular time I was probably 15 miles out. But like I said, you could only run those waves at a certain point, and that as far as for big waves, that was close to the top. Second one, and this was back early 2000s. Second one was early in my career, Lake Ontario, Eastern Shore Lake Ontario. It was the second day of a Bassmaster tournament. Hurricane Hugo had been on the East Coast up there, and so it brought a lot of wind to the East Coast. And I was fishing in an area called Chimo Bay, which is about, 8 or 10 miles out into the lake from the mouth of the St. Lawrence River. Wind was coming super, super hard from the west. It had been building all day long, and it was the same deal. It was very similar to that experience on Lake Erie. You had 9 to 12 foot waves. These waves were probably maybe even a little bigger than Lake Erie waves, and they were a little tighter together, but it just so happened that the waves were coming east and I was running north, so the way that it was set up, I could again run in the troughs all the way back to the mouth of the St. Lawrence River and get back in. But that was my first experience with super giant waves, and that was back when I had a 17.5-foot boat. So went through that particular water in a 17-foot boat with a 150 on it. And the Lake Erie experience was a 20-foot boat with a 250 on it. But my number one most dangerous rough water experience I've ever been in my life would probably be a place you would never guess, because like I said, I fished the Great Lakes, most all the Great Lakes, which are basically small oceans. The most dangerous water I have ever been in was at Lake Murray, South Carolina, practicing for a FLW tournament, first day of practice. And I was fishing over on the east side of the lake, and we had some type of a squall line come in where we had sustained winds of close to 70 miles an hour for, like, I'm talking for half the day. I've never seen such hard sustained winds in my life. So I spent, a good part of the morning, the mid up until noon or so, just hunkering down by the backs of the coves and stuff. And I decided, it's time I had to make a move. I had to get out of there, because I didn't really know how bad it was. So I took out across the lake running west, and the wind was coming out of the north, 60, 70 miles an hour. And these waves were the most dangerous waves I've ever seen crossing Lake Murray, which is not a real big lake. I'm gonna guess these waves were probably 5 to 6 footers, which is still a big wave, but it's nothing like the Lake Erie waves. But the problem with these waves is they were super close together. I mean, they were just super tight, and every one of them was white capping over the top of the wave. So you'd have when I tried to run through the troughs on them, they were so tight, the troughs were so small, and the waves were breaking over the top of the waves, that you couldn't really even run it like that. The water was coming into my boat, white capping over the top of it. I couldn't get in a trough to run the troughs. So what I had to do is I turned around and I just started sort of surfing in them, and got behind a set of islands, and I sat there behind these islands until dark, until the wind started coming down a little bit, and it dissipated to maybe like 50 miles an hour, and I was able to go. I had about, 4 or 5 miles back to my truck at the launch ramp, and I sort of just idled, with the waves back to the launch ramp there. But that was without a doubt the most, and I would have thought of it in a million years that just an impoundment like that would have such dangerous waves. But it was just a combination of those super hard, sustained, hurricane force, straight line winds. So anyway, that's the three most wildest boat rides I've ever been in my life, which has been a lot of them. And I'll say one thing about rough water boating is, as I've never been intimidated or scared by it, because, like I said, I really understand how to run. I understand how to run rough water, and I understand how to read waves. But the big key I want to give you all is slow down, because the biggest problems you have in boat driving that will mess your equipment up, it'll mess your body up, it'll endanger your lives, whatever, is going too dang fast in rough water. You have to slow down, you have to read the water. Don't try to take these waves head on. You need to counter them at a 45 or run through the troughs, and just take your time. And you would be amazed at how the water that you can go through if you just take your time and learn to read and sort of surf the waves. But anyway, there it is. Like I said, I hope everybody's doing good. Be safe, and we'll check in later. See you.